Okay, we're on. Red light? Red light's good, right? Alright, yeah. Oh, I'm asking you, you're a cat.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Puck short.
Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new episode of the One Puck Shot podcast. Happy New Year. I hope you had a good Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrated. I hope it went well and you got whatever you wanted from a big man in a red suit or spent time with family, whatever. You know what the hell I'm saying. So I hope it went well for you and you enjoyed the festivities one way or the other. Episode 94. Of the One Puck Shot podcast here. We've had a trade today. We've had some other trades during the festive period, as well as some other news going on in the state of Texas, which we'll touch on. But I'll start with the trade, as I mentioned. The Vancouver Canucks and Ottawa Senators make a strange little swap. Anders Nilsson and forward Darren Archibald are heading to Ottawa. In return, Vancouver gets veteran goaltender Mike McKenna, forward Tom Pyer, and a 6th-round pick in the 2019 NHL draft. Now, this is a slightly strange one, perhaps. Certainly from Ottawa's point of view, I guess the key point is that Craig Anderson is still out with a concussion. So Anders Nilsson comes in. He's a guy capable of, giving them some decent effort in net. He's been around before the Islanders and the Oilers and obviously the Canucks. Most recently, he's played 117 career NHL games. He also spent a little bit of time with Buffalo and St. Louis. And, he's a useful NHL goaltender. He's under contract until the end of the season. As we said, with Craig Anderson out injured, he'll at least help them stay something resembling competitive, which is basically what Ottawa are this year. I think people know they're kind of half bottoming out. Thomas Chabot is also injured. Justin Falk's been there and he's out as well. It's a bit of a mess. I mean, they've got, 7 players listed as injured. I mean, guys like Marian Gaborik and Clark MacArthur are, almost, MacArthur in particular, are almost sort of not worth counting perhaps because of the long-term injuries. But with Anderson out, obviously there's been a big hole in net. Mike McKenna did get a chance to see what he could do, but he's by all accounts a great guy. He's a fun follow on Twitter, but obviously those things don't necessarily translate to NHL success, unfortunately, because he is one of those guys that, as I say, has a good reputation. He's the kind of person you want to succeed, but he struggled to convert some American Hockey League success. He's been to a couple of Calder Cup finals, but he struggled to convert that success into NHL success. He's 35 now. I think from this, the Senators from the Canucks' point of view, they've got a guy here who they can waive pretty comfortably in the knowledge it'll probably clear and be able to be sent to Utica in the AHL, making way for Thatcher Demko. And I think that sounds like it's the plan. It is to have McKenna ironically back up against the Senators tonight. Nilsson will back up for Ottawa, but this is the move, as I say, that opens up the door for Thatcher Demko to come in. Hogberg will start for Ottawa, and he'll split with Nilsson in Ottawa for the rest of the year. Mike Condon, I think he's basically done in the NHL by the sounds of it. So it's say Nilsson and Hogberg until Anderson is back, and then in Vancouver it's Markstrom and Demko, I guess, of the foreseeable future, which maybe isn't that surprising. I think we all kind of knew Demko was probably close. Same with Carter Hart coming in Philadelphia, whether that has been a factor, whether Vancouver's top brass has looked at that and said, well, you know what, it's worked okay for Philadelphia thus far. We have Jacob Markstrom around to support him, who's obviously a veteran himself and, is a competent NHL goaltender. Perhaps hasn't reached the highs people expected of him when he was drafted by the Florida Panthers, but he's competent back there. And with the Canucks kind of hovering just outside the playoffs now, maybe they're going to use this as an opportunity to say, well, okay, let's see what we can do. Let's see what we have here in Demko. They're just outside. They're 2 points behind the Dallas Stars for the second wildcard spot, and they've played a couple of games more than the Stars. In fact, they've played more than everybody in and around the area, except Vegas, who they ain't going to catch. Chicago, who are way behind them. So, those extra games are probably going to count against them. So, as I said, this is, to me, it seems like the Canucks saying, right, well, let's go for it. Let's see what we've got here. They didn't think they'd get Nilsson probably through waivers, so they made the move. They've got a competent depth goaltender in McKenna. Tom Pyatt's value had cratered, really, over the last year or two. I know a lot of people who look at the underlying numbers are not surprised necessarily he's been moved or he's being shopped. I think a lot of them question what his value is in the NHL now. A few others have been talking about the value which Senators coach Guy Boucher put on Pyatt a couple of years ago in the playoff run, but he's not a guy really that many people consider an effective NHLer now. It's a depth guy for the Canucks, and there's not much more to say about that. Again, likewise, we mentioned Archibald off the top. He's going down to Belfield, it seems, and if Ottawa need a call-up due to injuries, he's there. That's really an AHL move more than anything. I think their key was Nilsson. And for Vancouver, I think the key was probably McKenna because it makes way for Demko. Other trades, both concerning the Edmonton Oilers. They made a couple of moves during the festive period. The first was adding Alexander Petrovic from Florida in exchange for Chris Weidman, a conditional third-round pick in the 2019 NHL draft. Weidman was acquired from the Ottawa Senators, in fact, in November in exchange for a 2020 conditional sixth-round pick, which the Oilers had previously acquired from the St. Louis Blues. So there's a bit of shuffling there with Senators players over the last month. The Oilers also went out and picked up Brandon Manning and Robin Norrell from the Chicago Blackhawks in exchange for Drake Kagula and Jason Garrison. Garrison's already cleared waivers and been assigned to the AHL. Manning was obviously the big piece coming into Edmonton, I think, even over Petrovic, mainly because Manning was the guy who hit Connor McDavid and broke McDavid's collarbone in his rookie season. He missed 37 games. It probably robbed him of the Calder Trophy. I think the way he played, outside of that, he would have been the Calder winner in that rookie year. But yeah, that was a move that caught the eye for that reason. I mean, Manning and Petrovic are third pair guys, really, and not necessarily good ones at that. Manning certainly is well, we've certainly raised some eyebrows when the Blackhawks picked him up, and of course the other twist to it is that McDavid and Kagula were close apparently. So the Oilers have shipped out somebody McDavid was close to. They've brought somebody in who obviously caused him some problems in his rookie season through what is rumoured to be, or Manning is rumoured to have said, was a deliberate action. And maybe not to break the collarbone, but certainly to hurt McDavid is the implication. But Edmonton are kind of desperate at the back there. I mean, Oscar Klefbom has been out for a while. He'd looked to have been rejuvenated under Ken Hitchcock, but he's been sidelined for several weeks now. Chris Russell is also injured. And without Russell and Klefbom in the lineup, the Oilers have given up 35 goals in the past 8 games. And that's why really these moves are coming. They're desperate for some kind of vaguely NHL-worthy help along the blue line to cling on to whatever hopes they have of a playoff spot. They're 11th in the West on 39 points. That's 5 points out. And as I say, they're desperate to try and hang in there. Certainly Peter Chiarelli, the GM, who maybe at one point with Hitchcock and Koskinen playing well in net and some other things going their way, all of a sudden the narrative could have changed. And I wrote about this on the blog last week that Peter Chiarelli, if things had gone or stayed as they were, the Oilers in sort of a wild card area and they claimed a spot, and all of a sudden it's like, well, they made the trade to bring in Larson and sent Hall off to New Jersey, and obviously the Devils are outside the playoffs, well outside the playoffs right now, and Hall's been hurt. Chiarelli made the move to shore up the defense by adding Larson. He made the move to bring in Hitchcock. He signed Koskinen, and all of a sudden it's like, well, this guy's got it going again. And it's how quick that narrative shift would have occurred, given the pressure he was under when he made the coaching change. But then a week later, or 10 days later, as we are now, all of a sudden the Oilers are, as I say, outside the playoffs and making pretty much any move they can to bolster their blue line. Norrell's almost a throwaway part in this. It'll be a depth addition to the AHL team, but they're desperately clinging on. They apparently tried to move Ryan Spooner as well. Spooner was only acquired on November 16th in exchange for forward Ryan Strome, who went to the Rangers, but nobody wanted to take Spooner on. So whether you want to call it a flip or an acknowledgement that the Spooner-Strome trade was not a good one for Edmonton, I frame that however you want, but the Oilers were certainly interested in moving Spooner by all accounts, but no one was interested in taking him on. And it's a tough spot for the Oilers. It's been a tough road for them, and obviously the frustration is they have Connor McDavid. They have the most naturally gifted player in the NHL right now, and they just can't seem to build an effective roster around it. And even at full strength, even when everybody's healthy, the depth chart is not great. And Elliot Friedman's reporting today that the Oilers may still be active in the trade market. Jesse Puljujarvi's still in play. I've seen some people involved in the Islanders blogosphere talking about Adam Pelech or similar, because when Thomas Hickey comes back, the Islanders have got a decision to make. Devon Teeves has done pretty well in his brief run with the team since being called up from Bridgeport. And so do they make that call? Pelech could certainly help the Oilers. I think he's a decent NHL defenseman. Again, there's a debate whether he's better than the third pair guy, but if Edmonton are really struggling at the back end, which it appears they are, it's almost a beggars can't be choosers type situation. So interesting to see what happens in Edmonton over the next week or so, if there are more moves or if they hold fire. Or I guess part of it depends on what they do on the ice. And as I said, with them slipping outside the playoff spot, that puts extra pressure on. And when there's the pressure on, that's when the moves tend to be made for better or worse. So sticking in Alberta, Michael Frolik's agent Alan Walsh, not a man unfamiliar to controversy, it's fair to say. He tweeted out on the 3rd of December, "Many people in Calgary have been reaching out asking why Michael is a healthy scratch. Keeping one of the team's most efficient and versatile forwards in the stands marginalises and devalues a great team player. Head coach's attempt to run good player out of town, ? Frolik, he's missed 15 games this season through injury, but he's played 23 of the Flames' 40. That was the only game he was scratched for. He was back in the lineup on New Year's Eve, an 8-5 win over the Sharks, during which he picked up 2 assists. But interestingly, he'd only got 7 goals before that game. Obviously, 2 assists is what takes him to the 9 points. It's whether something is not right there with Frolik and head coach Bill Peters. Walsh is, as I said, not unfamiliar with controversy, but as people have speculated, he's also not the kind of guy who would send a tweet like that without there being some, maybe, could we call it displeasure with the conversations that have gone on between him and presumably Flames GM Brad Treliving. Not the first agent, apparently, to speak to Treliving about his client's role this year. Pierre Lebrun, Sam Bennett's agent, also spoke to Treliving early in the season, though the stuff with Bennett seems to have simmered down. Obviously, with Frolik, it's still bubbling away. James Neal's also been struggling. He only has 4 goals and 8 points in 39 games. He did score against the Sharks, but when he joined Calgary in the summer, I'm sure he didn't envisage playing a third-line role. And that's where he is right now. The difficulty is, of course, that the Flames are winning. They are doing very well this season. Surprisingly so, despite some occasional ropey goaltending from, what was incumbent number 1 Mike Smith. He's had a difficult year. Dave Rittich has stepped in. Granted, Rittich today has been sidelined through injury, but they're top of the Pacific. They're, I think, given the way these things shake out, probably a lock to make the playoffs now. Certainly their chances of qualifying are extremely high, should I say. So it's difficult for people like Frolik it's difficult for guys like Peters and Treliving to want to make too many changes unless they are forced to. But equally, if you're Frolik, do you really want to kick up on a winning team? Because other guys are going to get hurt. You're going to get other opportunities. And it's whether the clash of personality or whatever it is between Frolik and Peters is or means more in terms of Frolik wanting to leave than wanting to stick with a winning team. Winning can paper over a lot of ills sometimes. All right, let's move to Dallas, because they've held some of the juicy headlines over the past week or 10 days, specifically the comments made by their CEO, Jim Lites, to Athletic's Sean Shapiro last week on Friday morning. It was following the 2-0 win against Nashville that Light Well, he used the Stars PR department to send out a message to local media, and Shapiro of The Athletic was the only one who could attend that Friday morning meeting, so he basically had a one-on-one conversation with Jim Light, who said some interesting things about Dallas Stars, Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn, and I quote, "They are fucking horseshit. I don't know how else to put it. The team was okay, but Seguin and Benn were terrible. I mean, they won. They beat the Predators 2-0 on Thursday night." Light continued, "We're a stars-driven league. Our stars aren't getting it done. It's embarrassing. Owen writes it. Write it." Well, Shapiro did write it, and here we are. "These guys are not good enough. They're not good enough for me. They're not good enough for the owner. And they're so not good enough for the general manager, who I can't speak for, but it's not good enough for the job he's done. We've had meeting after meeting after meeting. The accountability on the ice is not there. These guys are signed to big contracts because they're third and sixth leading scorers in the NHL over the past 5 years. They get their money. We expect them to not be outplayed every game. And if they're as good as they've been in the past, we shouldn't be having this conversation." Now, Dallas are currently in the second wildcard spot in the West, which isn't that bad a place to be when you actually dig into this a little further. Because I'm not sure Seguin and Benn are actually the problem. Now, granted, their offensive numbers are slightly down. Jamie Benn has 16 goals and 31 points in 40 games. Of course, the flip side for Light and Tom Gallardi and the Dallas front office is he's earning $13 million in real terms this year. It's the third highest salary in the NHL. It's $9.5 million against the cap, and that contract runs into 2025. For Seguin, his new 8-year extension kicks in next season. It's worth $78.8 million in total. Again, a big ticket. He has 11 goals and 34 points in 40 games. But after that, it really starts to fall away for the Stars. Alex Radulov's doing okay, but they've really struggled. They've not got a whole lot from their secondary scorers. Jason Spezza's an older guy. There's nothing wrong in saying that. He's starting to decline, probably as you would expect. I mean, he's got 21 points in 38 games. After that, the next high scorers are Miro Heiskanen and Esa Lindell. And then you fall away to Devon Shaw. Radek Vaska, 7 goals. Granted, John Klingberg has missed around 18 games through injury, and so they'll get a little bit more from the back end through the second half of the year via having him fit, but it's just not a great roster. Nichushkin hasn't worked out. Brett Ritchie's got 4 points. People seem to love him, but Julius Honka's only got 4 assists. There's not a lot there. They gambled on Martin Hansel's fitness. Didn't really work out. He's only played 7 games, a goal and 2 points. Ben Bishop and Anton Godobin deserve a good amount of praise because they've played well. That's probably one of the big reasons Dallas is in the position they're in the standings. But you've got to ask, what's Jim Nill going to do? What's his next step? He kind of, I say, endorsed Jim Light's comments as strong as they were. I mean, he admitted he wouldn't use the same strength of wording, the F's and the S's and the fucks and the shits and the buggers. I've said it now. I can say fuck again. And so, what's the next step then? You agree that they haven't been as good as they need to be. That's fine. That's demonstrably true. But equally, they ain't that far off the pace they've been before if you break it down in terms of points per 60 and things like that. As we said, that when the secondary scoring isn't there, what are these guys supposed to do? How much weight are they supposed to carry? And as a couple of people pointed out on Twitter, Jamie Benn is approaching 30. He'll be 30 in the summer. He's not 25-year-old Jamie Benn anymore. Guys, especially playing that way, we've seen with Milan Lucic and others, if you play a certain style, that can wear down after a while or soften, or however you want to put it. Maybe that's just what we're seeing. But the other key thing with Ben that struck me, just to deviate slightly, Michael Blake McCurdy tweeted out a couple of his charts, and Ben away from Seguin isn't great. There's a lot of shots against, not a lot of quality shots for. So how do you change that up? Radulov's worked out okay, but this is Jim Nill's 6th season now. He was hired in 2013. He brought Seguin in. That was a big trade, almost off the bat for him. But They've missed the playoffs in 8 of the last 10 seasons. Since Tom Gallardi took over, took over as owner, they've won just one playoff series. This is their third coach in 3 years after Lindy Ruff and Ken Hitchcock. I mean, Jim Montgomery seems smart, likeable, but if you haven't got the horses to compete in a tough Western Conference, I'm not sure exactly what Jim Light and Jim Nill and Tom Gallardi expect of Dallas, because the Central's tough, the West is tough. I know the Pacific's kind of horse shitty, but Vancouver and Edmonton are at least knocking on the door. They're not a million miles away, especially if Edmonton win their game in hand, they're 3 points behind the Stars. And we've talked about it earlier in the show. They're under pressure. Their defense is battered. It isn't the best at the best of times, but if Dallas slump and Edmonton have a winning run, which they're capable of, the Oilers might have lost 6 straight, but when you've got Connor McDavid, a winning streak of 4 in a row, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, if Talbot or Koskinen gets hot, that might be worth a couple of wins. All of a sudden, they're right on the Stars' ass. And that's not something Dallas seems to be able to, or seems well equipped to be able to handle over a longer stretch, because the secondary strength isn't being consistent enough. But they did get some good news. The Dallas Stars will host the 2020 Winter Classic at the Cotton Bowl on January 1st, obviously, in 2020. It was announced during the second intermission of this year's Winter Classic between the Blackhawks and the Bruins. Bruins winning that 4-2 at Notre Dame, of course. No opponent for the Stars in 2020 yet. Nashville has been the obvious one that many people have jumped to. They're a Central Division rival. They're a good team. They've got star players like PK Subban, who, side note, is getting his own TV show, apparently. But, of course, the counterpoint that a couple of people have raised is maybe Nashville would be better getting their own outdoor game of some form in 2021, year after. Again, the Preds are hot right now. They're a good team. They've got people who are engaging in terms of bringing in viewers for the game, the experience, the Road to the Winter Classic show, all this sort of stuff. So there's an obvious point to having the Preds, but equally there's a point to keeping the Preds back and picking someone else. Well, who else do you pick? Minnesota has been mentioned. There's obviously the history with the Stars franchise in Minnesota that's there. Again, Central Division rivals. The Wild are a decent team. Would you look at someone else that moves the needle TV-wise? Buffalo always moves the needle in terms of TV ratings. New York Rangers, because the NHL loves having those, quote, original 6 teams in there. They don't seem to want the Blackhawks or Bruins in again, thank God. But they're looking at someone possibly who can help sell it on TV a little more, shall we say. Now, I think a Nashville-Dallas game probably would do that, but equally, do you then say, okay, well, we said Buffalo move the needle, the Rangers, or do you even look at something like a traditional market like Toronto or Montreal versus this new market? I know Dallas isn't that new anymore, but you take my point. So all these things kind of have to go into consideration, and it is a little unusual that you announce the host without the opponent, but we'll see what happens. It sounds like it'll be a couple of weeks' time that we'll find out who the opponent will be. But I'm all for seeing these games go to other markets, air quotes. We've had outdoor games in Los Angeles. There was a piece on The Athletic this week about the outdoor game at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas in 1991. So it's not like the NHL hasn't been to warmer climates before. The weather's always going to be a thing. Even in colder parts of North America, you get rain, you get wind, you get sun. Was it the Pittsburgh-Buffalo game a few years ago where the sun was too low and glaring off the ice or something? And these things happen wherever. I'm glad it's not being held against the should we call it the warmer climate organisations or states or cities. And Dallas are going to get that chance, especially because the Cotton Bowl is a big deal in North America. I also announced, though, Heritage Classic. Calgary and Winnipeg meet at Mosaic Stadium in Regina, Saskatchewan on October 26, 2019. It'll be the first Heritage Classic game since 2016. There's also going to be a Stadium Series game. Colorado Avalanche will play at the United States Air Forces Academy's Falcon Stadium in Colorado Springs on February 15th. Again, opponent to be announced. It's the second Stadium Series game the Avs have hosted. They lost 5-2 to the Red Wings at Coors Field in February 2016. So the NHL seemingly getting behind the idea of the outdoor games again. Whether people truly appreciate them still or not, or I think it's a bit gimmicky. I think some of it still depends on location. It depends on matchup. As I said, I think the Cotton Bowl is probably significant for a lot of people because of what it is. But whether the Avs fan base feels the same way, I think they probably will attend. But it's not quite the eye-popping kind of fixture that maybe it could be. The Avs are fun to watch. A lot may depend on who the opponent is, but I'm not sure about that one. The Winnipeg Jets, Calgary Flames one is interesting though because the teams are playing so well. So that's sort of the extra layer of intrigue is you've got two, theoretically, I think the Jets will still be there or thereabouts, but if the Flames continue on their current trajectory, you've got two teams who are likely to be among the best in the West. So that's got a bit more of a selling point to it because you have a little bit more of a handle on what you're going to see as a spectacle because you know who both participants are. The other thing announced during the Winter Classic was that the 2020 NHL All-Star Weekend will be held at the Enterprise Center in St. Louis. Again, an organisation, a city who probably deserve something. An event is what I mean. And they've got one. The Blues ain't so hot right now, but in that sense, I don't think the NHL has ever been too big or too concerned necessarily with the team's quality at a given time. But it's nice to see these things spread around. I know not everybody is big on the All-Star Game. I talked about it with Sean Rourke a couple of episodes ago. It's for the league though. It's a marquee event still. Kids love it, and the city that hosts it nearly always embraces it. The fans embrace it. The one Nashville put on a couple of years ago was actually a great event. Alex Ovechkin, sorry to deviate out to the 2019 one. Alex Ovechkin is going to sit out of the 2019 one. I apologise, tripping over my words. Guys do. I mean, I think it was Taves who missed one a couple of years ago. They have to sit out the mandatory one game, but in the main, these are popular events. In the cities they're held in among young fans, and I understand why people don't like them. I understand why the NHL tinkers with things to try and find something that works from a fun, entertainment, interesting, whatever you want to call it, point of view, but also from a, for lack of a professionalism point of view, because I know they concern with sort of like the draft was guys getting liquored up and acting out a little bit too much for their liking. So, it's finding that balance because a lot of people like the draft, but as they say, maybe it wasn't in keeping with what the NHL wanted the weekend to be in terms of, schmoozing sponsors and putting on a show for young fans as much as anything. But as I say, and as Sean Walk outlined on episode 91, it's still a big event for the league. It's a big event for whichever city gets to host it, and obviously that'll be St. Louis in 2020. And I think that probably brings us to the end of this episode. Just a quick one to recap, to try out my new microphone. Hopefully the sound quality was better. I'm still getting used to it, and probably tweak the settings over the coming weeks and things like that. But it's just one of those things I want to try and work on in 2019 is just to improve some of the production quality a little bit, and as well as lining up some more quality guests. I've got a few hopefully appearing in January, already got a couple hopefully down for February as well. So yeah, happy days, and a lot to look forward to over the coming months. A little bit of housekeeping I'd like to engage in just to close the show. Obviously, you can follow me on Twitter at RobMcGregor35. You can find the blog, onepuckshort.wordpress.com. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/onepuckshort, or you can email the show, onepuckshort@gmail.com. Pretty straightforward, I think. If you're an iTunes subscriber, reviews are always appreciated. Love the show, hate the show. Feedback is important to what we do and improve things. I do it because I enjoy it, and generally will just do what I think works. But if there's things that you've particularly liked about old episodes, would like to see brought back, or you just want to get in touch in general, then drop a review, drop an email, drop me a tweet, Facebook message, whatever, really. So the other things you can do, if you would like to support One Puck Short, there is a PayPal donation link and an Amazon link on the blog. The Amazon link, just follow it, shop as you would normally. It won't cost you any extra. I get a little kickback from Amazon, which I funnel back into running costs for the blog and the podcast. So there's hosting costs, equipment costs, things like that. And as I said, I wouldn't do this if I didn't enjoy it, but it can be costly as well. So, if you do enjoy what we do, always appreciative of anything like that that people want to do to support the work, and hopefully it means I can do more, as well as the running costs can be spread. Does that make sense? I'm quite conscious I'm sounding like I'm cap in hand here. I don't want to do that because that's not my style. Normally it is renewal this month is all that brought it to my mind. So I apologise as well for the brief salesmanship spell there. But yeah, there's nothing more to add. I just wanted to recap some of the events from the last 10 days since the last episode. As I noticed, got some great guests lined up for the month ahead, and some new hardware to hopefully improve the production side of things. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll speak to you all again very soon.